Thanks, John. In 1986, I started my research. Yeah. I used a lot of the first-hand accounts. There are many journals and memoirs left from the day and from the men and women who were caught up in, in the turmoil and chaos of this time. And so that's the way I was able to envision the war. You'll notice that, for instance, my battle scene that that I dramatized most explicitly is seen through the eyes of a young boy, Toby, who is 16 years old and has never seen war. And that was really the only way I could do it, because it was new to me too, and being naive about the weaponry and so forth, I had to sort of describe it and see it as he experienced it. And that I think is why it's different from how war is often portrayed. I wasn't really looking for glory in the war at all. I was looking more for the pathos, which to me is more interesting. I did find, it's funny, my mother has always been very troubled by the fact that this book is so violent, and how did I do this? And to me it was much easier writing the violence than it is if I watch it on television or read it in somebody else's prose, because I have a sense of control over it and I can stop it if I want to, and I know exactly what's going to, and I can pace myself as I go through it. And so it's not quite as troubling to compose as it is to experience as a reader. Yeah, several reasons. For one, I think the Alamo has been told and retold and told badly too many times, and it never to me symbolized the great things that we've tried to impose on that battle. Goliad, or Coleto, they called it the Battle of Coleto because it happened near Goliad, but it was at Coleto Creek, was just more interesting. It was more interesting strategically, militarily, and it was more interesting, I think, in a human way, because of the situation of having to decide whether or not to abandon the wounded and let their leaders sneak out by cover of darkness and get away, and that all these men chose to stay with the wounded and surrender, knowing that they might all be taken out and shot, which of course they were, having made that decision. It is because at the Alamo, the men supposedly went down swinging, and at Goliad they surrendered. And Goliad is not, there is no, it's not a story that, that the rebels liked to tell because they had surrendered, and it's not a story that the Mexicans have liked because it resulted in a brutality, which Santa Anna ordered. Oh. He's a very mythical, disfigured human being, and one of the many dispossessed, because this book is really about the land and about all the people in this chaotic time who were trying to claim the land, the people of various races and religions. And Callum McKay, who is the individual who is scalped and then wanders the landscape sort of in search of revenge, is representative of all these people. Of course, the Native Americans initially, and the Spanish, and the people who have claimed the land and have lost it. And so that's what the book is about, though it really isn't about him, it's about what he represents. Well, he actually is fashioned after a real-life character named Don Carlos de la Garza, who was a wealthy Tejano ranchero down along the San Antonio River with a big ranch about the place where I've put De La Rosa's ranch, and had a lot of cattle and a lot of vaqueros working for him, and lost everything at the time of the revolution, because these people, of course, were never again in power after the revolution ended and Sam Houston won at San Jacinto. Most of them lost their land, lost their cattle, and many of them disappeared. Right. Now, I had so much respect for De La Garza, or De La Rosa, because he refused to leave after it was all over. What happened was that the Anglo settlers began to move in then in mass numbers and poison the cattle and try and drive these people off the land, and he stays. His ranch is burned. He's lost everything. He's got 3 vaqueros working for him only, and an old ox to pull the cart, and he's out building the corral again, the same size as he built it initially, and so he stays. And he really did in real life. In fact, it was interesting. I met one of his descendants while I was at a book signing who came up, and the De La Garzas are all still there. He's a great patriot, and,
yes.
and you said exactly right. He was committed to God and country, and yet he didn't have the passion for life or the passion for people that Adelaido, who was a great scoundrel in the
yes.
beginning, he was a tobacco smuggler.
That's
yes.
right.
And gun runner. You know, he turned his talents to profit during the Revolution. And yet in the end, Adelaido is, this, you know, is a survivor of a different sort. And we see him, you know, heading west to search for gold because he doesn't lose his dreams. We see Houston in here only, though, from the point of view of my characters. Well, no, the same with Fannin. Yes, exactly the same with Fannin. And this is the thing. I wanted in this book, in the first book, I felt such a heavy burden of having people's reputations in my hands because I was dealing with real characters and giving them motive and giving them dialogue, and always wondering, you know, whether they would have liked the way I presented them or resented it, or was it, you know, was I in some way disgracing them? And always feeling that the ghosts were looking over my shoulder while I wrote and saying I never would have said that, or I never would have said that way.
Yes.
And I wanted freedom from that completely, so that all of my characters that I deal with that much intimacy here are my own fictional characters, and we only see the real people who lived, we only see them through the perception of my character. That is because we see him at his moment of disgrace. And anytime we're made, you know, anytime you're made privy to somebody's downfall and their great moment of disgrace, there's a certain connection there, I think, and you feel a little voyeuristic. So I think we do see him. It's not that I ever really entered his mind and the way he you know, what he was thinking privately as a point of view character. I didn't use him that way. But we do see, I think we see more of his emotions because of the situation he was in. No, I'm so familiar with Sam Houston, and it's funny. It's like knowing somebody very well and then seeing a picture of them doing something that you didn't actually know they did, but not any big deal. It's a funny thing. It's just another moment in their life, and so that's what it was like to deal with him briefly and from the outside, as opposed to you know, working with his emotions and trying to discern his feelings. I was much more comfortable with the novelist role in this book. With the last one, I sort of felt at odds between, you know, am I recording history or am I telling stories? And with this one, it was just easier for me, I guess because I had practice with the first one, and also because my characters were so much more mine. She was a working editor. There's no question. Her touch is on every page of this book, and in a microscopic way. And she was not only instructive and attentive to the language, she was also very attentive to the conceptualizations of plot and characters. But, you know, of course, for me, she was like a fairy godmother. She came along and gave me what I wanted most in this world, which was to publish what I had written with The Raven's Bride. And then she guided me as I really groped from page to page in this book. We worked mostly over the phone and through the mail. I met with her 3 or 4 times. But basically, we did this meticulously over the phone. She was very insistent about cutting, deleting excess things. She did not like sap. She was, you know, she would say, this is a saccharine metaphor. You know, it has to go. Or in this sentence, you've strung together 4 prepositional phrases. Choose 2, you know. And she was very emphatic about those things. And yet, she was so affirming in every conversation that I came away feeling good about my work. In one conversation, I realized afterwards that what she had said essentially was, 1/3 of your manuscript should never see the light of day. It needs to go. This is terribly overwritten and overwrought. Sprawling was one of the words she used. Unwieldy. And yet I came away from that conversation inspired, because what she did was sort of point out what the ballast was and just tell you how to toss it overboard. And you felt like you were going off to liberate the ship instead of going back to the grindstone, because she was that affirming. Well, she was big on, you know, cut and delete. She always had those in capital letters with squiggly lines underneath them. And, you know, page 334, cut baby crying. Page 345, cut chickens. Page 364, overkill, can you delete? Cholera and Cressida, overwritten, cut. That kind of thing. And then also with the characters, much of this relationship between Katie and William is cloying. You must eliminate some of Katie's angst, her hemming and hawing, etc. It gets irritating. That sort of thing. She often did handwritten notes for me, and often, you know, she would type things up. But it was always very, like Della Rosa, she said one could fall in love with him, but when you overdo describing him, it undercuts his power, makes him sound out of central casting. And baby Samuel is so over-described it could turn one off babies. She, and also just, she was always very, you know, she said, this is melodrama, I'd eliminate. This is pretty trite, can you cut it? This simile seems silly. But she was, you know, and here, eliminate with and put a comma after doorway in the sentence. You do this often, incorrectly use with as a connective to cobble together two disparate thoughts. And here she says I had put hawking mucus. She said, this is the third or fourth time you have used this image. The reader gets annoyed. Here's gaucho hat. Gaucho is Argentinian. Would that term have been used here? Should be youngest of the three, not the younger of the three. That sort of, you know, very close attention. And she was there. You know, it was, she took, I remember the first draft I was so nervous about turning into her, because the idea that this mythical woman is going to be handling your misbegotten prose it's troubling. And I was so nervous to send her the first draft of this, you know, just the first half of the first rough draft. And she, so she took it home over Christmas and read it. I got it to her, you know, like before everybody left for Christmas holidays. And the day everybody was back at work, there she was. She had already read it and been through it and had all these wonderful, encouraging things to say. And that's what we had wanted to do, was tell, you know, a big, epic, old-fashioned story with love and war. And I think she liked that idea too, you know. So that's something contemporary, I think, because I'm tired of the research and the note cards, and it's too much to enter into again right now. So I'm going to just do something I can just sit at my computer and do without having to go to the library every other day. Yes, but it's so embryonic, if that's a word, that I no, this is very different. I think it's not even anything I'm sure I know how to do. I'm just going to try to, I'm just going to try.